Gamers, gals, non-binary pals, happy Pride Month, and there is no greater pride than I have than to give you the worst Master Duel tier list of all time, post-Banlist and post-release. For a quick refresher, for those of you who may not be aware, Cybersign banned, Smoke Grenade banned, Terraforming banned, Keldo Limited, Mudora Limited, Agito Limited, Sprite Blue, Girsu, Nadir Servant, Metaverse, and Ben 10, as well as Magnamut and Druis Worm. Banned! Not banned. Limited. Shut up. Anyway, here I have a list of every single deck that's relevant within the format. And if your deck is not on this ban list, then sorry, but your deck isn't real. So, we've got S tier, which is just going to be the best decks. A tier is going to be super duper playable. B tier is technically playable. Anything that's C tier and below, just don't. It's not real. No, don't try and convince yourself. So, Adamantipator. Before, Adamantipator was technically a deck. It was actually like pretty good, even though it kind of got overshadowed by tier, because you could like smoke grenade hand loop the deck. It wasn't amazing, but like obviously fucking hand looping tier limit by sending their cards to the graveyard, I don't think is you know exactly what you want them to do. But Adamantipator lost smoke grenades, so although it's still a combo deck, gonna have to put that in the B tier. Next up, Crystal Beast. I don't care what Neshi says. I don't care if Neshi has more MCS tops than me. I don't care if Neshi can search Mystic Mine or Necro Valley. I'm sorry, but this deck is dog shit. This deck is not real. The only reason Neshi won those events was because Necro Valley was legal. I'm sorry, I just have to say it. Are you really searching Ancient City Rainbow Ruins with like Crystal Conclavation, Bridge of Salvation? Or are you searching Necro Valley? Next up, we got the branded pile. Now, we're gonna call this like branded in the sense of like branded pure and not branded tier. Spoiler alerts for tier limit. That shit is still S tier. You're gonna have to give me a very real argument for why this shit is not gonna be S tier. This shit is unethical. Branded is definitely way more playable. We're gonna get the Bestial Lubellion, so we can search Bestials. I don't know if we're getting Baldrake yet, but if we are, then we're gonna have 8 Bestials spread out across the main deck, so we're almost guaranteed to always open at least one. And yeah, just pure branded seems to have a lot more tools. Is it better than tier limit? I don't think it's goated, but I think it's alright. I'll put it in the A tier. I think it's a good deck. Actually, no, I lied. I'm putting it in B tier for branded. Next, we have Flu. Flu, I'm sorry, but D-Shifter is not enough to carry this deck. It did lose Barrier Statue of the Stormwinds, which was pretty big. It just has so many incidental like hits, like Extrav to 2 or Prosperity to 1. I'm sorry, you cannot justify playing Flu anymore. If you want to play a shifter deck, just play Exo Sister. Speaking of Exo Sister, we've got Exo Sister. In a best of 1 format, Exo Sister is marginally better than in the TCG. Do I think it's good though? Technically, it's an anti-tier deck. I'll put it in A tier for just the sole fact that it shits on tier like half the time. Like sometimes like tier limit just opens nutty enough that they just don't care. Like, ooh, a banish. Crazy. If you don't open like Vadis plus the other trap, you're fucked. Next, we got Lab. Lab, I'm sorry. Until tier limit is out of the format, this deck is just stuck in C tier. You cannot justify playing this deck in the fucking tier limit format. You know why? Because every fucking lab card destroys. Like what? Like why? You can't even hand loop your opponent because you might hit a tier name. Until we get Calm Pulse to the main deck, this shit is in C tier. Oh yeah, we also don't have the new support. Konami, please give us Big Welcome and Bigger Mommy. Please, I need to be able to FGK my opponents with a single Big Welcome. That shit go dummy hard. Next up, we got Rune Deck. I don't think Rune Deck is good. Rune Deck, I'm sorry. This deck is just not good enough. There is not enough stuff that Rune Deck has going for it right now. And Rune Deck just doesn't have the most amazing matchup versus tier. You could technically deck it out. It's probably like C tier, but Rune Deck Naturia, Runic Sprite, I'm sorry, it just doesn't do enough. Like the ultimate yardstick of like this tier list is ultimately just, does it have an amazing matchup versus tier limit? And if it's not like a 20-80 matchup, I'm sorry, like your deck just cannot be any better than C tier. Twitch staff? Anyways, Sprite, it's a deck. I think it's pretty good. I think that like Runic Sprite or Sprite for Hire, or even just pure Sprite with like a fuck ton of Bestials, I think it was legitimately great this format. If you play like Sprite with like a bunch of anti-cheat cards, stuff like Ghost Reaper in the main, like people are doing in the WCS, I legitimately think it's like A tier. I think it's better than Exo Sister by a mile. Sprite can shit on every other deck. Exo Sister loses to decks that don't rely on the graveyard. Exo Sister can't beat certain decks. Sprite can beat any deck. I'ma say it. Next, we got Sword Soul. Miwa, I'm sorry. This deck is not that good. It's actually like fine. It's probably like tied with like Brandon, but I'm sorry. Protos is the only thing this deck has going for it, but you can't end on Protos every single turn, which is the problem. You can't open Protos every single game or expect to just sack into it. I'm sorry, like Protos is just not consistent enough for this deck's line of play. You just sometimes can't even get to it. Like that's just like the problem. This fucking deck. Unfortunately, as more time passes, the more we have to be aware that we kind of have to accept that Numeron might unironically be an A tier deck. Numeron is unironically like a great deck. I hate this deck so much. I think it's cringe. I think it's boring. But unfortunately, just having a stupid OTK fucking deck just whack you out of nowhere that almost has like a 90% guaranteed OTK rate. Like, how can you make this not like the perfect solo queue grind deck? This deck can play Shifter. This deck can play a fuck ton of hand traps. This deck can play board breakers. This deck can play kaijus. This deck just has everything. It is so cringe, but it's so good in best of ones. Next, Mathmech. If tier limit didn't exist, Mathmech would probably be at A tier. But because, you know, Mathmech's only good thing it does is send shit to the graveyard. Oh, what's that? Send to the graveyard. Hello? Ring, ring, ring. Banana phone. Tier limit Hobness would like to know your location, and she is rapidly approaching. This deck is penis bad. It's probably like C tier. Honestly, it might be D tier. I'm not even joking. Oh my god, and we're getting Bystials. Yeah, this deck is like worse than Crystal Beast. Is Rika like a deck? I generally can't be like sure if Rika is like a real deck or people are just like coping. Anyways, this shit is D tier. You can't change my mind. I'm sorry. I just can't justify putting Rika in anything above D. It requires so much setup. It's so interruptible. And like, yeah, even though it does like tribute for cost, who cares? It just doesn't matter. Dog, if you're playing Cactus Bouncer in your deck, something is wrong with both you and your deck. Next, we got Naturia. Runic Nat. I fucking hate Runic Nat. Runic Nat, I think, is the most annoying fucking deck on planet Earth. Like, this shit is so fucking bogus to play against. The problem with like Runic Nat or like Runic Nat Ishizu is that it kind of loses to the same stuff tier limit loses to. So like everyone's gonna be like gunning for you, which is like one of the big problems that I think Runic Nat has. Like it really is just the most inferior version of tier limit to ever hit the black market. Next we got Spiral. Spiral. It's a cool combo deck, but again, Spiral's like the most bricky thing on planet Earth. And guess what? Spiral loses the Bystials, so gotta put that in B tier. Honestly, I'm putting this shit in C tier. I'm sorry. And loses too hard to shop. Yeah, never mind. This shit is D tier. I'm sorry. This shit is dog shit. Next up, we have Stun. Stun is such a cool deck. This deck is actually relevant. I'm not even joking. If you want to play like a Stun pile, like you could probably do decently well. Like normal summon Border, like activate Necro Valley and like set 4. I'm not even joking. This shit is actually like pretty good. Like, how does tier limit out it? Very easily actually. But the thing is like tier limit has to be able to grind out a couple turns to actually deal with your stun tools, which they can deal with pretty easily. But the problem is that like if tier limit can't do that fast enough or find the right cards in time, stun will just kind of slowly beat you to death. And that's not to say that like tier limit has a bad matchup into stun. Funnily enough, it's actually got a pretty good matchup. Let me get a shout out to Heartbeat, the one and only. But if stun goes first, like it turns like a 10-90 matchup to like arguably like a 70-30 in stun's favor. It is insane. It will ultimately just like sack wins, and it's extremely coin toss reliant. But I mean, you're playing stun. You know, like you get what you pay for. And finally, Endymion. Yeah, this deck sucks. Anyways, thank you to the tier list. The tier list was pretty pog. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Remember, tier limit best deck. Konami, please fucking ban this deck, and anyone who thinks that this format is cool is cringe.